Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Growing Farms Podcast with your hosts, Troy Bishop, the Grass Whisperer, and me, John Suscovich. Today's topic is how to purge when farming gets you down. Here's the show.
So Troy, I was supposed to come to your house today and record this episode, and I couldn't because I got a little stomach bug. And so I wrote you an email, and you responded with an email that was, shall we say, spirited? You sound pretty fired up, man. Tell me what's going on.
So I unfortunately I used that opportunity to purge myself. Purge? Yeah, I was purging
Like bird vomit?
Yeah. You know, I was sort of vomiting on my email because you asked me something along the lines of, "So, what do you want to talk about?" And I'm like, "Oh, here's a couple things. Bam, boom, boom, bam, bam." And
here's what really grinds my gears.
Yeah.
Yeah, you relieved a little stress there, and I was like, all right, Troy therapy over email.
Yeah.
And then I got you on Skype here, and you bring up the topic of purging. So you're purging negative emotions now, Troy?
I am. So my thought process is how do we purge our frustrations, our anger? How do we not be mean-spirited towards that purge because you're trying to dispel the energy? Do you talk to your wife? Do you talk to your Facebook friends? Do you talk to your internet? Do you say it on YouTube? You've purged before. You've said, well, this one bothers me and this thing bothers me. And doesn't everyone or farmers, you know, how do we purge when a customer says, yeah, I can buy it at Walmart, and you want to reach over there and go,
you're talking about that guy who's coming up and is like, oh, your chickens are $6 a dozen. I can get them for $2 a dozen from my neighbor. Or I grow chickens myself, and I'm getting an egg a day all year round, and my birds never drop in production. And I'm like, first of all, that is not true. Second of all, that person you hit a note here, Troy. I get it. So we're talking about, like, you have something that goes. You're supposed to be chipper and happy at the farmer's market, right? Yeah. And someone comes up and poops all over you, craps on your game. And then you have to bottle that, continue to be nice for the next couple hours, and then go home and, like, punch the wall.
So how do you relieve that? Do you feel bad about yourself? Do you drink more? Do you get a little CBD oil in you? Do you I don't know, what do you just yell in the woods? Do you write it down?
Screaming into the ether.
No, I've actually read on the internet, which, you know, factual or fake news, whatever, but there's some place that says swearing is good. You go back in the woods and just put your face in a pillow or whatever and just like blankety blank. I actually feel pretty good after that. And so the purge, I'm sorry, your purge moment, you hit me at a point when I was talking to a friend of mine who got asked to speak at a grazing event, a big one. They didn't get to go because of the polar vortex and so forth and so on, because it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So she put in, let's say she put in 30 to 40 hours in, like, 3 presentations, right?
Yeah.
So she can't get to the venue because of the weather. So she had to drive 2 hours to get to the one airport, and she had to sit there, and then it got canceled, and then no one communicated with her at all. So she's sitting there for 2 hours, and then they said, well, when you get to the if you get to the airport, do you mind taking your own, renting a car and driving to our polar vortex conference? She's like, what? You mean you're not gonna like pick me up, or like, you're I'm a guest. Anyway, the long and the short of it is she didn't go, but she also lost 30 hours over time because I asked, I said, "Oh, are you getting paid? If you don't go, you don't get paid, right?"
Yeah.
But she put in, do you not get like a I don't know, an emergency fund? Like, hey, sorry it didn't work out. I don't know. Here's $100 worth of a food ticket or something for your troubles, or like. Anyway, it wasn't, even if she got there and everything was fine, if you're not going to pick her up and, show her around or treat her like a guest, it's crazy. And guess what?
Therein lies a whole other topic.
Time.
Whole other topic of like ag conferences and getting good speakers and properly compensating speakers and balancing an event where it is difficult to balance the books on hosting an event, having people come spend money on a conference to get out there, and then being able to budget that out onto supposed to be this fundraising event, usually for like NOFA in the Northeast or whatever ag organization in your state, in your area of the country, because we have listeners from all over. But at the same time, you need to cover all your costs, try to make money for your organization, and incentivize good content to get people to get there. So like hiring speakers, paying farmers to come out, having them give presentations. You want there to be a level of quality. But most times, having spoken at conferences before, you're getting a free ticket to the conference. You can go to any of the classes for free, and you're like, I didn't even want to go to this conference in the first place. So sorry. And then, they're like, so that's one carrot that they dangle, is just a free conference ticket for you to go there and do work and present and prepare a presentation so you don't look like an idiot. And then you have to get there and cover whatever travel expenses. And, on the lower levels, they're like, all right, here's your $50 or $100 check that we'll mail to you in a couple weeks. And then you take your $50, which you spent on gas to get to the conference anyways. And if your goal as a speaker is to just get a free ticket, then that works out. But the people who know enough and are good enough in their business that really have the information that they need to share to help other farmers, like, don't have the time to leave the farm for $50. Right. Like it's a kind of a broken structure where you get what you pay for, and the cheaper you pay your speakers, the lower quality speakers you're going to get, which is not going to drive attendance to your conference, which is going to degrade the quality of the conference overall. I see it happening in my state year after year, and I've stopped going to a lot of the local conferences here just because I'm like, I don't want to get paid $50 to speak. Being a vendor at the sales thing never really pans out, because the quality of people who are coming are not people who are willing to invest money to better themselves. And then you end up in this like sad situation where you go home and scream into the woods, or, hit that bottle of bourbon a little harder than you might have otherwise.
Well, it's definitely, whatever you ask me, oh, so what are we going to talk about? That sort of hit me. And then I got asked to speak. Again, this purging, it manifests itself through experiences. Like as you're talking to your friend, and it helps that we both talked. She told me what happened, and I said, "Oh, I went to a conference, and I brought another farmer speaker with me." And we got like that $50. It didn't even cover the cost of the tolls and the gas one way. But it was okay, because there was it wasn't terrible, but it was like not the realization from the organization that you matter. Like, dude, $50, they're for two people for a couple hours worth of, we got to get off that. So anyway, that purging back and forth, that discussion, that freeing of your emotions. So then it actually ended positively when my friend said she went to another venue and they picked her up at the airport. They got her settled in her hotel and then said, take it easy for an hour or two. We'll come back and get you. We'll go to a farm visit. We'll go out to dinner, that whole guest relations. So it was awesome. She's super happy, did a great job with her presentations because her spirit was better. Anyway, you can just see how the conversation back and forth is, I know what you're going through, you know what I'm going through, and that releasing of emotions is something that you said you're a psychobabblist or a psychoanalyst or like what, how do we in agriculture relieve ourselves of this emotional stress? Again, a lot of it has to do, at least for you and I, not all the time, but I can tell when you got some pent up anger, and then I go, oh, it's a little grumpy today. And you immediately know that I know. And then you can say, oh, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to purge. I'm going to yell. I'm going to feel better when I get done talking. Because you usually, a lot of times you text me, because you don't talk to me. You just text me. You say,
I don't get phone service anywhere on my farm. It is impossible to call.
You do text me something like,
we're working on our internet, Troy.
That felt good.
Sometimes you just need to, sometimes you need to purge or release. There are a lot of things that are frustrations, and as entrepreneurs, there are high highs and low lows. And what we're talking about now is when you hit the low lows, how do you act on that? How do you release that, and not to sound like a hippie, negative energy? So you're bottling it up, and it may come out in inappropriate ways where you blow up at your spouse, you blow up at an employee, you demonize somebody for reasons that just may not be completely necessary. You may have somebody that you work with that screws up on occasion, but once you see them in a negative light and you have other things happening in your life, you're going to see all the negatives that person does. And instead of seeing the positives with a few faults, like because they're a human being, you're going to see all faults. And because you have something wrong in your own life or there's somebody else affecting you, you're going to pass that negativity on to another person, because we as humans need some contention, an enemy. It's something that brings groups together, that pacifies us. It's easy to generalize your whole life or scenario when you have one simple, like, this person or this thing is bad. We still see it in our politics all the time, where like comprehensive immigration reform and the wall. Like, it's easier to say the wall than it is to say comprehensive immigration reform, because with the wall you have an enemy and you can try to bring people together against that enemy instead of really addressing the core of the problem. So finding ways to release that, identify it first, where you say, all right, I'm grumpy, I'm about to blow up on this person. Is it my fault that I'm about to blow up on them, or did they really do something? And I have to live with that person after this conversation. So do I really mean what I'm about to say? If I want to choose somebody out for something, I'm like, do I need to eat? Usually when Kate and I get a little tight in our conversation, she's like, here's a banana, take a minute.
Which is super smart, to pause. And how many times do you take a step back and pause, and then do you have an outlet before you address whatever it is we're gonna do? Do you have an outlet?
Totally.
And to say, hey, does this sound right to you? I'm going to write about PETA, and here's what I'm gonna say. And usually my wife is the bellwether. I say, here, how does this sound? She goes, ooh, that sounds kind of bitchy. Like, oh, really? She goes, yeah. Can you tone that part down, but still be firm? Like,
Yeah,
oh,
like
yeah, the voice of reason. There it is.
talk quietly and carry a big stick.
Yeah.
Like you have your argument. If your argument is sound, you don't need to raise your voice or use inflammatory language.
Right, but
and like you can cut somebody. That's the core of good debate, is cutting somebody down with facts and realities instead of emotion and faith.
But again, we're just talking about the purging part. Is everyone a lot of people have
my purging mechanisms?
What is your techniques? What are your purging, Psycho Man?
So as a kid growing up, and I still feel a kid at times, I'm 34, just turned 34.
You're still a baby.
I've done a lot of maturing in the last decade or so. I go through my teens and I was very emotional and very passionate, and that passion has kept up, but the way in which I deal with my emotions has changed dramatically as I get a little more mature. And then in my 20s, the same thing. I thought I could conquer the world, and I was quick to say, like, this is wrong, that is wrong, I'm right. And now I've gotten to the point where a little bit more zen, and I have things in place, mechanisms in place to deal with the fact that I can be at times a hyper emotional and very passionate person. Still a very passionate person, but the emotions are in check. And I do that in a number of ways. In a writing sense, I will write to you or to a friend or to nobody. I'll write an email with nobody. Don't ever put somebody in to the to line if you're going to sit down and write a piece of anger, because you may just want to delete it. You don't want to accidentally send, here's a look into the dark side. And you're like, oh, I didn't mean to send that, because you rationalize it in the moment, and then you go to sleep. And you wake up the next morning and you go, oh, man. A lot of fights end up that way, where you're like, in the moment, you're angry, you're yelling at the person, you say something that you don't mean, you go to sleep, you eat a banana, whatever. And then you're like, I sounded like a jerk there, and I had a good point, but I went about presenting it the wrong way. So I'll either write it down. I'll talk to Kate about it, because Kate is a great sounding board. For when I'm worked up about something. And then I go to the gym twice a week, 3 times a week, and get punched in the face. Then like the most literal sense. And I get to punch other people in the face, Troy. Nice. And throw people. I do. I've been doing jujitsu for a number of years now. I've been doing martial arts for a long time. And then now for the last couple of years, I have a steady, consistent outside of farming place where I don't even have to. We make a little bit of chatter, and I have some friends there, but it's not like going there for my mental and verbal therapy sessions. You go there and it's like organized Fight Club, and I get stronger. I'm told where to stand, what to do, how to improve. I'm bettering myself. I'm increasing my flexibility and my strength, which all of these things help out in the farm. And at the same time, it checks me out from the farming world, so that when I come home, I'm jazzed again. I'm excited to get into tomorrow. I get to go home and eat a bunch of junk food, because I'm like, well, I just burned a bunch of calories, so I can eat whatever I want. And I watch an episode of something on Netflix and go to sleep. So having creative outlets, and sometimes it's a walk around the farm where I'm like, I'm worked up right now. The freaking tractor, I couldn't find the socket I needed, and then the bolt broke off, and then I tried to use the thing to walk the bolt out backwards, like that bolt extractor, and then that broke, and I'm like, either I take a wrench and I beat the side of my $36,000 tractor, which I'll regret, right? That's the too far thing that you regret. Or I go, all right, Zip, I take the dog for a walk, and he and I go out, and I'm like, you know what? The sun is shining, the birds are chirping. I just needed a second to let some steam off, and then I come back to it. Where the burnout has happened to me in the past, and this is the most extreme example, is that I'm pushing and I'm running and I got to get a bunch of stuff done, and it's like end of July, August, and I'm like crushing it, and things go wrong, and like that tractor breaks, and then someone shows up and has a problem, or an employee doesn't show up, and I end up in the back of the farm overheated, and I just pour a hose over my head and just sit there for a second and wait. And that's my pause, where I'm like, you're too hot. You need to eat and drink some water, pour the hose over your head, and assess, like, how did you get here and how do you avoid it in the future? And then that's like my mantra of like, Why are you angry? Are you really angry at the thing you think you're angry at? And then how do you avoid this in the future? So then you're not working towards combating your current like bad situation where you're fighting with somebody. You're saying, all right, I'm fighting with them because they didn't coil the hose. Did I have instruction on how to coil the hose, where to put the hose, whatever the thing is, and then you're working positively towards avoiding the bad situation again in the future.
I hear you, brother.
I've spent a lot of time with this.
Yeah, I know. I've seen it, lived, helped you through a few things, and again, back to my original purge was when you have stories to tell and you're sort of on an equal field. Let's say we're just farmers, so we're on an equal field. I got problems, you got problems, we all got problems. So the way I saw it going down was, I'm like, well, tell me about this issue. And so she told me, and I was like, oh, right. And I was sympathizing, I was empathizing, I was like, yeah, and I got my story, and here it is, bam, 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 and you're back and forth. And then all of a sudden, out of that, those stories, and you're like, well, I can top your story. Yeah, I'm going to top your. Finally, you come to a like a Zen moment where you're like, well, let me tell you about something good. You know, like they really treated me well. And then I'm like, yeah, I got a couple of those. You know, that's important. And all of a sudden, you've purged. Both of you have actually purged something, right? Because it's equal. Like I don't want to keep listening to your babble. You know, I want to I want to integrate some life lesson or whatever. But if you both get to, germinate this purging, then you get to a place, it's organically happens, right? It just all of a sudden after 10 minutes you're like, yeah, and then this happened, and by the end of the 20 minutes, we're laughing and telling jokes, and you're like, then either I say it or you say it or my friend says it, that felt good, I feel better. And
that's why that's one of the benefit of the conferences or getting out. That's what, going to Texas and seeing all these other poultry producers and knowing my own frustrations with pasture poultry. I don't have to explain any of that to any of the 200 people that were in that room with me. They all go, I know, here's how we start to address it. And it was this immediate case of positivity where you have somebody else in a like field that shares your struggles, that if you're not afraid to vent, share your emotions a little bit, like it's not a soft thing. Like you don't have to bottle all this up. You don't have to project strength all the time. You have your comfortable places that you can go to, the people, your relationships that you can share the struggles with, which makes everything else a lot easier. Bottling it up inside, thinking I can hold on to it, saying like, oh, my dad never talked to us, so that's the way I'm going to follow that, is just like, he just buckled down, he got the job done. And you said it in previous podcasts, like, I don't want people to stand around at my funeral and go, man, he could work. Yeah. And I just had my head down and got the job done. I do that, but I talk through what I'm experiencing, good and bad, with the people around me so that we can iterate, so that other people can get on board. I managed to talk through the excitement and frustrations that I had with farm marketing solutions, and you jumped on the podcast with me, and that's awesome. So like, you never know what opportunities are going to come from sharing what's in your head. You just have to be comfortable with sharing what's in your head.
Right. So I guess the last part of this topic was, so for listeners or people that subscribe that don't have our relationship or don't feel like they have a way to vent, so what would you suggest? How do you get to a place where there is some sharing? Because what I've actually seen over the last 3 weeks, the conservation district, farmers will call and want, a grazing chart or whatever, and it ends up becoming an hour-long vent session on the price of milk, the prices are low, this one didn't pay their bill, or, just you're almost going every hour, every conversation, there's a rabbit hole we're going down.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the reflection of actually what's actually going on with our pricing and our agriculture at this point right now. Is there's a lot of hurt going on. And the thing I guess I feel good and bad is I feel I can empathize with the customer, but I'm also feeling not bad because they trust that they can purge to me.
Yeah.
And I can judge, we can laugh. I'm like, oh, you're such a pansy. I've been down that road, right? There's at least some mutual respect where we can get this stuff out. And again, at the end of the conversation, we both feel better. So
yeah.
Where do farmers, young farmers, old farmers, where do they go? Is it their wives? Should we have more networking groups of, I don't know, I hate to call it a therapy group.
Well,
what is the best option?
No, totally. If you think about what we had more of these institutions in the past, and some of them are still around with the Grange, the Lions Club, the whatever, where people would come and meet once a week, your church, whatever institution you may or may not belong to, a community group. For me, farming and agriculture, one of the reasons I got into it and why I will always continue to stay in it, I love what I do and where I'm at, is the community that surrounds our farm and our brewery here. And that I benefit from having a very public place where people are in and out. It has its ups and downs where you don't always want to talk to somebody.
Right.
But you've seen people like pull on my sleeve as I walk around the farm. It's just part of my life. And I chose that. But I chose this lifestyle because it has strengthened my family, where I spend more time with Kate and Mabel and develop my relationships there. I'm very open and honest with my wife. I've had people, because you get into farming, there's going to be people who are interested in what you're doing. There's industry groups. There are the winter conferences where you're finding people in like scenarios. And you just start a conversation and not be afraid of saying, you find another milk producer and don't say, like, how did you make this profitable? Open the door with a very specific question. They're coming to you with grazing chart information, and that's solving a problem. But what they're doing is developing a relationship with somebody who is in their industry and gets their struggles. And then they feel comfortable sharing, like, oh, I've come up in this roadblock before. And then you share a story, they share a story. And that's what it is to be a human. That's the community part. That makes this whole thing more manageable. If you struggle with talking to people, a book that I bought for several people throughout the years, and then I read every couple of years just because it's a great refresher, is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's some common sense stuff in there that you just forget to do, or it helps teach you how to approach some of those conversations, how to be a better person. And if you're trying to get somebody to talk to you at the farmer's market, if you're trying to win over a spot to give a presentation at a conference or whatever the case may be, reviewing that book will give you some of the groundwork of basic, just like how to be a person who can have a conversation and get people to like you. That it's a good help in an armchair reader when it's in the winter months and you're sitting in the chair like, all right, how do I approach this year? So the two things, not being afraid to start the conversation and just see where it goes, bail if it's not going well, and keep going and develop that relationship if it's going good. And then if you want a little help, a leg up, me who studies this stuff all the time and loves it and totally eats into it, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I'll put a link in the show notes for this episode.
Sweet. All
nice.
Right. So is the purging over for now?
Yeah, I talk to you, and every time I talk to you, I feel better. I get to see with Skype now your big smiling face because I couldn't make it up there in person. And let's keep hitting the record button, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode.
Okay. Awesome.
Later, buddy.
Later.
That is it for this episode of the Growing Farms podcast. It's a new season and we have a new format, and if I must say, these episodes are pretty killer. If you want to follow along, you can subscribe wherever you catch podcasts or go to farmmarketingsolutions.com, and there's a big button on the homepage that will take you where you need to go. For now, I hope you have a great week, and we'll be in your ears with a new episode next Thursday where we talk about the best piece of advice we've ever gotten. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and until next time, I will see you out in the field.